Alright folks, welcome back. So, at long last, we have sighted the convoy, and at this point I'm now just turning to roughly match their angle on the bow. As you can see there, we'll talk through this when I pause it here, but or when I pause it, when I when I stop turning. So, as you can see there, we've got ships in sight. They are moving from right to left. That angle on the bow there, a little hard to see in the haze, but let me get in the UZO here. It's tough to tell whether or not they're coming slightly toward us or away from us, but I have a hunch that they're slightly toward us. So that angle on the bow there is probably about probably 80 degrees left. So at this point starts the use of the file. So 80 degrees left. Now this is the utility of having somebody in the tower. I've got my SOPs. I've got the navigator in the tower to help with this. But basically, so I've got the line on the funnel there, and I think he's at 80-degree angle on bow. So a few things to note. First off is the course. So one course is 332 degrees. So I go back in here. I go to this first tab, put 332 degrees in. Now I need to go back and get my, and I don't move that, I know he's 80 at that particular bearing right there, so I don't move the UZO. I go down, or ideally have somebody read it off for me. Go down here. I take a look at that bearing here. So this is the 10s dial, this is the 1s dial. So his bearing is 80.5. So I'm going to go in here and say relative bearing is 80.5. And I think he's at 80 left. So 80 left. Target course is 313 degrees. So I'll set 313 degrees. Well, the up and down here is for a heck of a deal here. So 313 degrees, so I'm going to come left and match the course, what I think is the course. So again, this is similar with the compass here, if you're not familiar. 313. So the inner dial, this vernier dial, is the 1's place, so that's 313. I've already reduced my speed down to 7 knots. That's a good starting spot point. Dead slow on the surface is about 7 knots. And so at that point, what I do, this is a constant bearing method. This will give you a good workable starting point for your speed estimate. So assuming that's not actually 100 degrees left, and it is 80 degrees left, it won't matter for this. Because we're talking about the law of science, and so it actually won't make a difference what side of 90 he's on. We just, at this point, we watch. The fact that it's so close to 90 is a real benefit of in this method. So, well, scope's going, or our UZO's going up and down like crazy here. But I put that line on his funnel or any reference point that you really want, and I just keep it there, not moving my mouse. And I just watch. And this one is almost too easy because we're practically at 90 and we've almost pretty much matched the speed. He is actually creeping ahead of us just ever so slightly. You can see that. The funnel is moved. Hopefully you can see that in the video, but the funnel is moved forward of the line. So at that point, I'm sort of fresh out of options as far as turning goes. So at this point, what I'll do is I'll increase my speed incrementally, and just to confirm the speed more accurately, you can actually go to click on the navigation chart in the control room, not click M anywhere, but you have to go to the chart, and then look at the top here. You've got the 7 point. This will be important later, course and speed. So I do have 313 in there now, so we just update that, and then let's go back and. We're gonna adjust our speed, and we're gonna go dead slow. Slow ahead, and then we're gonna go both engines 10 slower to give us a speed incrementally between these two settings here. So a little trick to be able to see. And at this point, this bearing's going to probably move aft a little bit, so at that point we can start turning away to match. So this is probably going to give us, I think, 9.5 knots. I'm just going to go ahead and put that in here as our speed for the calc. One thing I could have done right away, that's usually a good idea, is when we're at that bearing, the first bearing, where you calc his angle on the bow, or estimate his angle on the bow, is just go ahead and input that into the TPC right away. I didn't do that, but it's usually a good idea to do that. So I think we're going to be stable at about 9.5. So at this point we go back up topside, and we continue to watch, and I guarantee you that's probably going to move aft. That bearing line's going to move a little aft at this new speed, and so we watch, and we see what happens. We are a little far away. We might lose sight of him, so we could even turn toward to try to match his bearing, but we'll see. We'll see if that's a good idea or not. But typically you turn away, but I'm going to turn toward him just so we don't lose sight of him. So if his bearing was moving aft, so I'm going to adjust my course 20 degrees to the right. 20 is a good starting point. So there's 10. So at this point what I'm doing is I'm simply just trying to achieve, I'm going to be done adjusting the speed now. I'm just simply going to be trying to adjust my course to give us a constant bearing. And from that, that's really sort of a one, if you want to call it a pillar. I talk about pillars in my tutorial. This really is a pillar, because you know, it's a stake in the ground. You've got that, assuming the target doesn't change course and speed, you know, you can, as you get a better idea of his angle on the bow, you can go ahead and keep adjusting that and really fine-tune that initial speed estimate. So funnel's moving slightly to the left still, or excuse me, slightly to the right. So we need to turn. We're going to turn another 20 degrees in. I can tell having Open Broadcaster up is hurting my frame rates a little bit. I can already tell that. I'm stuttering a little bit here, but that's alright. So, okay, so now we will continue to watch. At this point, this movement should start slowing a little bit. The bearing change should start slowing a little bit. So we're watching the funnel, and I apologize if you can't see that very well in the video, but alright, so it's still moving aft pretty well here. Alright, we're going to go ahead and adjust another 20 degrees in. I hope I'm not, I hope I don't regret turning toward him here. I usually turn aft, but since I don't want to lose sight of him before we get a constant bearing, so. Alright, so that's good there. I'm going to watch again. Get that funnel going. You know, the other alternative to this too, it's certainly not as exact, but is to just get to a 90-degree angle on bow and then just try to match his speed. All right, so now that bearing is moving forward. So now we're gonna move back in 10-degree increments. I'm gonna go back here. Now we're really fine-tuning it. So now we continue to just sort of adjust course like this until we don't see that funnel moving anymore. Put on the funnel here. Now we just watch. You know, and for this, I'm not gonna, you know, maybe not wait the full couple of minutes, just in the interest of keeping this thing moving along. But we're pretty much there, I think. He is moving a little forward. Again, so we're gonna move just now at this point. We'll do 5 degrees. Let's see what that gives us. And really just narrowing it down here. Start with 20 degrees, and then once it moves the other way, go 10 degrees back, and then 5 degrees, and you get the idea. You're just sort of walking your way on to a constant bearing, or course that will give you a constant bearing. Still going here. Alright. So now he's moving back a little bit. Ever so slightly. Get too crazy about waiting the full 2 minutes, but we're just gonna, I just want to get to a spot where I'm comfortable with that bearing isn't changing by too much, and then call it good. Because there are other checks, of course, that we'll do as we continue. I still think he is slightly angled toward us. Once we get that constant bearing, I am going to drop down to the chart and get another. The other thing about this too, I should mention, is that it helps to have a helmsman, because you to keep that course right on the mark, so you're not drifting. So part of this is that I think that we're yawing a little bit, so that might be causing us to have a little bearing movement. But you know, that's if you do this method and you've got a helmsman, make sure you tell him to keep the course right on the line there, right on the course. So we're going to call this good enough. So at this point, like I said, I want to say his angle on bow, his course was 313 is what we originally estimated. So, but I can say that at this point that angle on bow is probably, you know, still about 80 degrees or so. So I'm not going to move the scope off at this point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to note own course again, which is 359. 359, and then I'm going to go down and get that that exact bearing, and I mean exact bearing. You've got to get that down to the 10th, and luckily with this you can. So this is 54 point. I'm going to even call that 54.9 and 4.9. Okay, so 54.9 is this bearing. 54.9. I want to say speed is 9.5. We should check. You should have it confirmed again to the 10th decimal place. 9.5. We can rest on that number. 9.5. And then the angle on bow at that juncture, I want to say is 80 left. Our own course is 359. Okay, so 314. So that's roughly what we thought the course originally was when we first estimated it. Okay, so 54. So this is 55 here. So okay, that's about it. So this, the result of this is now 7.9 knots. So that's our initial estimate based on matching course and speed like that. So I'm gonna at this point go up. And since I'm still on that bearing, I'm gonna set 80 left. I'm gonna set the speed for 7.9, just a hair under 8, and then I'm gonna set 80 left. 80 left, and then of course, as we go along, we are gonna true that up for as we get a better appreciation for his course, and we can do that right up to the end. The only thing that you need to do, it's important to do, is that you need to make sure that that his angle on the bow is still what you expected every time you look at him, because that's how you really detect, without plotting anyway, that's how you detect course changes. So we're going to just turn to a parallel course and move for a night attack. I will shoot on the surface. I typically, it's good practice to try to get to 1,000 meters. I am going to shoot from a longer range just so that I can ensure that I'm not sighted, and so A, to ensure I'm not sighted, and B, to keep the video shorter. I'm not trying to show off. I'm trying to. It helps to demonstrate, obviously, the use of the method, but at the same time, I'm not trying to show off in this. So we're at about a parallel course right now. So at this point, it makes sense, I think, to we're going to go to grade ahead, and then so at this point, you really have a couple options with my tutorial. I do mention the constant bearing in there. I also I mention using this section here so now that you've got a speed estimate, what you could also do at this point, once you accelerate to your full overhaul speed, you could input that speed in here, input the target speed you just estimated here, and then do a bearing change over a minute, and then read off the angle on bow from the TDC, or use the attack disc or whatever based on his course, and that'll give you actually, as of the first bearing, as of this bearing here, make sure you compute the true bearing using the attack disc, but, well, excuse me, no, this right here. So put your course in, and then you get your true bearing. That's based on the first bearing. That's the range that you would plot your first point, and then you could just simply do a extend that line out, that bearing line out, and then to the range, and then use the protractor to measure his angle on bow on there, and then that's his course line. And then as you overhaul, you can check that course, and using rough ranges and bearings, and you can plot where he'll be at it. I usually use 5 minutes, but you can use 3 minutes or 3:15 or whatever you want to do. Use time, speed, and distance to mark off where he would be at those intervals, and then use his bearings as a check on that figure as you overhaul. That's sort of how I get around the lack of a decent way to find range at long ranges in this game. With the scope in degrees like we have it, it's damned hard to try to figure that out. There's a large margin for error. So as we go here, I'm actually thinking that he was at 100 degrees left and not 80, because now his masts are becoming more aligned, and so I think already I'm going to go ahead and true that initial estimate up to be 100 left, and you'll see it actually doesn't change the speed estimate at all, because the law of sines, it's 10 degrees on either side of 90, so it won't matter. So that's that. So then, but we do have a new course, of course. It's 359. Excuse me, 334. 334. So that's just what I'm thinking is the case here. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust my course to be parallel to him again. Sign me up for helmsman, apparently. Alright, so oops, 334 I said. Jeez, I can't even follow my own orders here. Alright, yeah, so we're almost about 90 now, so we can actually, one thing I will do here is get the correct angle on bow on the TDC, so we can do that knowing that his course is 334, so what we do is we say, okay, our own course is 334, at this bearing here, go down, we'll stand by here, we'll get his bearing, so it's at 80, this doesn't have to be exact by any means, 86, bearing is 86, own course is 334, excuse me, I want to use this one here. AOB from course, so 86, 334. Target course is 334, so the angle of bow is 90 degrees left. So I would go in and set. I haven't moved the Uzio at all, so 94 degrees left. That's right there. Alright, so then that's, at this point, I think we've got his course pretty much dialed in. I think when we watch and we see, you know, we're going to fine tune it obviously a little more, but we'll go to full ahead so that we keep this moving here as fast as possible. Alright, so then the other thing you could do solo, and I do find myself doing this solo, is I just use the attack scope for this, and just literally stay down in the tower for the entire thing. If you're alone, because you're right there at the attack scope, or excuse me, at the you're right there at the TDC. So just a little something I found. It's easier. So at this point, and you know, those that have played with me have heard me rave about the TDC in this game. So the TDC in this game is, you know, it does in fact work like the real one did, where, as opposed to Silent Heart 3 or Silent Heart 5, where in this game and in reality you would, all you had to, there was a setting on there that would track your own changes in course. So at any given moment, the TDC would display an angle on the bow independent of your course changes, whereas in the other games, so that, hold on here, that looks to be almost a 90-degree angle on bow. Let's just check that with the TDC. Whereas the other games, as soon as you change course, yep, there it is. Okay, you have essentially rendered your angle on the bow invalid at that point, right? So, you know, and that really removes a huge asset from the German TDC, and I would even argue that the German TDC was better than the American TDC in practice. Not to start a flame war or anything like that, and I know it's not because I'm German that I say that, but I just think for for convoy attacks, the German TDC is it. You can shift to targets, and the computer will update the angle on the bow based on your scope bearing. You can turn while shooting. I actually go into that process in my tutorial and in my in the Excel file instructions. You know, Germans did that a lot, where you essentially can start at one end of the convoy, initiate a turn, and then acquire each target as you're going by, and if your scope is to a bearing that will give you a 0 gyro angle, as soon as those targets cross the wire, you'd shoot. And the advantage of that, of course, is that you don't lose time in escaping. You already initiated your turn, and so you shoot while turning. Schießen im Abdrehen, that was called in German. Schuss im Abdrehen is a shot while turning. You'll see that if you look at, and I recommend doing so, is going to U-boat archives .net, .org, .net. I can't quite remember, but the torpedo shooting reports are all there, and I believe they're translated as well. So they're make for some interesting reading there to see see how these guys actually did it. So anyway, so that's pretty much it. So so at this point, that's the method, constant bearing to get speed, and you can eyeball angle on bow, but really what's important is you get that initial speed as sort of a stake in the ground, and then as you move through the evolution or the engagement, use the attack disc to get a better speed estimate, and then go back and adjust the angle on bow in your constant bearing calc by that amount, so that you zero this out, true the course up to a better course estimate, therefore truing up the speed estimate in doing so. So so that's that. And then to reiterate again, you can go back and use a bearing change based on that speed estimate to get an initial range, to go ahead and plot that. Well, find your sub, and then plot that as the start of a plot, and then the method that my what am I doing? I'm already in Wolfpack. The method I center my tutorial around is really a day engagement where you are where you're essentially running around in front of the target so that you can ascertain a zero degree angle on the bow, all the while plotting bearing lines while you move in front. And if your navigator is diligent and you watch that angle on the bow, and as soon as it hits zero, you call mark, and that navigator plots that bearing line, that is theoretically his course line. And then once you draw that course line back, you can see where those bearing lines that you took at intervals intersect that course line, and then you can measure using time, speed, and distance. You can then measure a speed estimate based on that as well. So that's a number 2 check. Constant bearing method is one way. Doing that is another way, during the day anyway. And then when you submerge, you'd move on either side of the target. And then once you're on your attack course, you'd time his bearing change over a minute. Because now you can read the range off of the map, assuming your navigator is plotting your underwater movement. You know where you are relative to the target now, because you know his course line. All you have to do is get bearings, where those bearings intersect his course line at any given moment is his range. So now you've got a range, you've got an angle on bow, you can use a bearing change method. Those are the 2 variables besides bearings that you need for that method. You can accurately compute his speed now based on those now pretty much known values, assuming your zero angle on bow was accurate. So anyway, so that's for another time. That's the full day engagement is for another. But this is really just to introduce the Excel tool and just how it sort of interplays with the game here. So getting a little further away here, so we're going to just turn 2. I guess in the meantime we could identify that target. So those of you that are not aware of this, you can count the masts. Now there might be a mast in front of, there might be 2 masts in front of the bridge there. I only see 1 at this point, but the masts are M, funnels are F, and king posts, which are the goal posts, are K. So the trick in the recognition manual is to say from bow to stern, to say, okay, there's a mast, a funnel, and a king post. So that's M, F, K. So then I'd go into the manual, and I'd go in here and I'd say MFK. All right, and then I go back to what I see. Now I do also remember seeing a pretty high island in the front there. So I'm thinking it's this guy right here. Heavy freighter type 23. Maybe I'm all wet on that, but I think that looks to be about right. So, yep, there's the lifeboats there I see on the stern. Yep, so I think that's it. So then I can make a note of his length and his mast height, and I can try to do just while we're killing time here. Might go down and just switch to the attack scope and see if I can get a range at long range using some of the other tools in the file. So we won't lose our angle on bow when we do this, but at this point, assuming he's somewhat easy to tell the height of his mast, which sort of is, we can demonstrate a couple methods. So we could do the scope range based on mast height. So what were his Those vitals here. We had length of 142 and mast height at 33. So 142 and then mast height at 33. I'll put it into both here. I'll also put it in here. Mast height at 33. I should really just link all these. Length is 142. Mast height is 33. So it's in every place that we'd want it here. So the first one here is to get his range. If you wanted to, you know, obviously put to the water line, and then count the marks. You need to go to the, you need to interpolate, which is why this should really be in mils. Excuse me, like it was in real life. But I'm seeing about 1.8. So 1.8. So I put that scope right there. 33, 1.8 at 6. We were at 6 magnification, so he's at 7,330 meters. Okay, so that's based on mast height. So that's how you use that. The other thing to do is you could do length, or do yeah, based on length. So to do that, we have his oops, his length in. That ain't right. So we have his length in, and then we count the horizontal marks, and we say that's probably about 6.6 or 6.7. Angle on bow. We need to put the angle on bow in, so it's already in the TDC, so we'll keep our scope there and just read it off. Or you could use the attack disc, but 68. That's right, 68. 68. Magnification is okay. Well, that's not right. This is right. This is not right. I'll have to look into why that's off. But I might have a formula issue in there. But 6. Yeah, I must have a formula issue in. Cause that's not right. It should be this, not that. So, all right. Well, I need to look into that. Target length. We could compute his angle on the bow if we wanted to using aspect ratio. So for this, got his length, got his mast height in there. We count the horizontal marks, which we already did, which is at this point 6.7, and then count the vertical marks, which at this point is really, it's hard to tell at this range, but you can get a rough. Let's call it 2, 6.7 and 2. Horizontal 6.7, vertical is 2, so 51. And we'll check that against this. 51, 63, 64. Yeah, so that's not at longer ranges. I think it's not as helpful to do. So sorry, that's a little premature on that. I think his angle on the bow that is showing in the TDC is more accurate than that. It's just, I think it's a function of not having that a clear mast to see and being so far away. So we could try 1.8 maybe. Yeah, okay, 1.8. That gives us more of a. You can see how volatile that is. You know, the difference between 251 and 1.8, literally 0.2 degrees, gives you almost a 10-degree difference. So actually, 1.8 might even seem more accurate there, and so which then gives us, again, it gives us a little better answer. At 60 degrees is closer to what TDC is showing. So that's how you do that. It's really only meant for closer ranges where you can see the mast height. You can measure his degrees horizontally and vertically much more accurately. This one doesn't really make sense to demonstrate now, but it's very straightforward. The range at the moment angle on bow at the moment, and that will be this distance from the track. So, so at any rate, that's that. So, so I'm going to put this down, and then I'll switch back to UZO so that we do this somewhat historically here and shoot. Oops. I'm getting a little close here for comfort, so turn off. So, what I usually like to do is I like to get to at least at a maximum of 45-degree angle on bow at night to run in for the attack. I will do it close to 45 tonight, just because I don't want to prolong this video. Like I said, I am going to shoot at a longer range just to demonstrate a shot without having to get detected. Because ideally, I think on a night like tonight, I'd actually attack submerged. It's bright enough out to do that, but just in the interest of keeping this moving, I am going to shoot from a little further out. So. See what this guy is. So this guy here, 9,000, so type 23, and then this one here is, that's a mast, king post, funnel, king post, so MKFK. MKFK. Okay, so then that is... It's hard to say. That could be any three of those. Let's see. Let's look at the bow structure. Looks like a slight island. Could be that guy there. Oh, the forward mast is this. Yes, it's this Eiffel Tower looking thing, for lack of a better description. So that's 8,000 tons. So that's type 8. So we got a type 23 and a type 8. So both of which are going to give us our goal, obviously. So I would say when the forward guy's angle on bow gets 45, then we'll turn 2. So let's take a look here and see what he's at. So we're looking at 50 degrees here. Yeah, so again, ideally it'd be let me check his speed throughout the evolution here. Bit in that. I'm going to start slowing down a little bit. Speed. approach his 45-degree mark here. Check his angle on bow again. It becomes a function in constantly checking the angle on bow, constantly comparing it with what you see, and fine-tuning his speed using that. So 50 is about right there. We could also do another check. Now the masts are probably a little more visible. We could use the other one here and use mast height of 28. Check his range. Mast height of 28. To check the range now here on this guy. It's the highest mast. So he's probably sitting at about 1.5. Still at about 74. Length of 45, 28, 28. Horizontal marks are 6.3, and as we measure the vertical marks are about the same. 6.3, 6. So 49 is what that's looking like now. So we'll switch to attack periscope. 49, by God, it's right about there. So that's good. That's good there. So we'll call that good. I think our course, his course is pretty much dialed in. So let's make double sure that we think we don't need to true his course up at all. So we'll get our own course. Easier way to do that from here is to just go down to the nav map. Own course is 12. So I'm going to go in here, attack disk. Own course is 12. His bearing. I need to go to the TDC to get that. Bearing using the attack periscope is 95. Relative bearing is 95. On course is 12. Angle on bow we read off, which is 40. That's damn hard to read, you know what? 47. Okay, 47. 47 left. 334. Okay, so it's right on. We haven't changed it at all. So 334, and 334 is what we were basing our speed calculation on initially. So 7.9, we shouldn't need to change that at all. So let's take a look and see what angle on bow is now. It's getting to be there. 45. Yeah, that's about right. So okay, now I am going to, for this ease of use, you typically wouldn't do this, obviously. But I'm gonna steer from the attack scope here just to make this quicker, because I'm solo here. So so at this point, let's go slow speed, and then we'll go right full rudder. Historically, so at this point, if all you folks that are familiar with the handbook, U-Boat Commander's Handbook, the guidance was to approach on what they call the dog course, and dog's course, and that Hundekurve, which basically means you keep your bow on target to keep your profile low throughout the entire rest of the approach, for obvious reasons, right? So keep the low silhouette, low profile. So and they also recommend an approach speed of probably about 7 knots or so, just to keep your bow wake down. So obviously, none of this is probably simulated in the game, but I like to keep to historical procedures as much as possible. That's always been how I've played these games. But so at this point, we're just turning on. We're going to reduce our speed to dead slow. Another reason for that is we will do a check actually of his speed using the fixed wire method. I'm not a huge advocate of this for a submerged attack. Okay, but for a surface attack, absolutely, because I mean you need to be bow onto the target. I'm not an advocate of stopping. I'm not an advocate of stopping submerged. It's not historical. It's gamey. But I am an advocate of doing it on the surface because you can you have your bow on target already, and so you're going at a relatively slow speed at a 0-degree bearing, pretty much minimal impact on the solution. So this will be a final check of our speed, just to make sure we're on the right track here. So his length is 145. I have not built this into the file. I probably should do that. I just do the math myself, but very simple calculation. I'll show you how that's done. You don't know already. Stern's across the wire now, so I stop the time 37 seconds. So I say 145 divided by 37 times 2. Speed is 7.8, and damn close to what we estimated in the constant bearing method already. So that's what you call close enough for government work. 7.8. So so I'm gonna just drop it down just ever so slightly, and then we'll call it good. So then at this point, what I typically do is I put just a little hair of rudder in there, so I'm always turning with their bearing change. And then at this point, we're just waiting until we get really an impact angle. So to those of you who are not familiar with this, we're going to try to shoot it as close to a 0 gyro angle as possible. So that both of these needles are going to point upwards to the extent possible. This up here impact angle is really I almost call it the quality of your solution. It should be as close to 90 as possible to ensure that your torpedo track is running as near perpendicular to the target as possible. Range should ideally be now on the surface, typically a little longer range, unless it's a black night or you're submerged. But for submerged attack, you're going to try to want to get under 1,000 meters. For a surface attack, it's complicated because you've got escorts and lo and behold, you are on the surface, so obviously complicates things a little more. We're going to do another angle on bow check here. So he's looking like 50 left. That's about right. I'm going to take a range because I am going to shoot at a longer range. So 2 point. It's about 2 actually. $5,600. Okay. Yeah, we're not going to wait a whole lot longer here. Well, we're going to get down probably to about 3,000 meters. Let's just put it that way. And actually, what I am going to do is I'm going to actually demonstrate the shooting while turning method. That is actually kind of an interesting little trick, if you want to call it that. So what we'll basically do is we'll once we get to a point where we think where we like, and I'm going to even go slower actually than, well, no, this is fine. Once we get to a point where we think we're at a good impact angle or a relatively good angle on bound to shoot, I'm going to start from the left. I'm going to initiate just a shallow turn to the left, and I'm going to preset my scope so that it's on a 0-degree gyro angle. So that's about, well, first of all, let's set the range to what we think it's going to be, roughly 3,000. And so we're looking a little further to the right. That's close enough right there. So what we would do when we're ready to shoot is we keep our scope on that bearing, and we tell our helmset to initiate a turn. And as we turn, I'm going to do it slowly because I can't switch the tubes here, so I need to switch back and forth to the TDC and back. But we're essentially starting a turn and blinking the targets as they go by this bearing. This is our shoot bearing 0. So the point, obviously, of doing a shoot bearing that corresponds to a 0 gyro angle is that you effectively eliminate range from the equation as a limiting factor on the solution. Why that's so is beyond the scope of this video, but suffice it to say, there's good documentation of that phenomenon on subsim. Range actually doesn't matter if you shoot it as close to a 0 gyro angle as possible, which you should just be striving to do that all the time to eliminate a range. So now, obviously, range is helpful to be able to determine whether or not you are your torpedoes have run. Time is up on your torpedoes, but so that is one advantage of having range. But and at large gyro angles, you absolutely need it to correct for parallax. But so at 2.5 now, 2.5, 4,400. Okay, we're gonna set up for a shot here real soon. Not to get impatient, but I want to make sure that I'm absolutely not detected in this video, and I think that yeah. So his impact angle now, as you can see, I mean, it's not the best. It's not the most ideal, but for instructive purposes, we'll call it close enough. So still got a little right rudder in. We're gonna. Yeah, see, this one's going to be a little better. It's a little closer to 90 there, so that one actually might be pretty darn close to 90. But all right, so at this point, you know, we got the speed pretty much dead to rights. We've got their course pretty much dead to rights. So I'm gonna turn to my shoot bearing here, which is about here. Whoops! Oh my God! Right about there. And I'm going to go ahead and start a little sharper turn. Maybe like that. Now I just watch. You would be turning faster in real life than this, but since I'm chief cook and bottle washer here in this boat, I am going to just do this. So just to demonstrate here. So range is I'm going to set the more accurate range here is about 4,000. So doesn't matter, but it's just good to. So there's the first fish. It's out. Select the tube, so my gyro angle, you can see, is pretty close there. Adjust it a little bit. Back on the 0. That's right about there. And then the second fish, which I did select, is going to go out. Now, okay, now we've already initiated this turn, so at this point I'm going to just go slow ahead, get a little, let's go topside, watch the fireworks from up there. Oops, hold on, I need to get a better idea of time to impact. It's going to be about 4 minutes, I think. Let's just start the timer now. I didn't start it, we lost some seconds there, but so 4 minutes, so I don't know, let's call it 3 minutes and I don't know what, 3 minutes and 30 seconds or however long it took me with dilly-dallying before I started the timer. So now we're already turning away. So you know, we're maintaining our stealth. Turning away before while starting that turn before we even shoot, turning while shooting, and then just continuing the turn again. In reality, the TDC had a function on it that that allowed for, because it was an old analog computer, a lot of times the speed of the course change of the boat would outstrip the speed that the gears could actually turn, and so the German TDC had a function that would improve the speed of the dials turning based on some particular setting in there that you set based on the what am I doing here? That set based on the turning speed of the boat, expressed in red or green terms. So red 3 might be port, hard to port, and they would lay the rudder in such a fashion, of course, and it would set the TDC in such a fashion, and that TDC would automatically turn the dials to compensate for that change in course, to allow for this turning while shooting. It's an incredibly innovative function of the computer of the time, but of course now with our Insta computer that we've got here, living in the digital age here, that's not a concern anymore. So you can turn as damn well fast as you please, and it won't impact anything. So probably the turning is the faster the better, I would say, to use that method. So God willing, and the creeks don't rise here, we hit these guys. I think we will. So otherwise, it's all for naught. Not really, but probably another minute or so to impact, assuming our range was right. But again, range won't have a factor because we had a good course and a good speed set. So and shooting at a 0 gyro angle effectively eliminates range from the equation. So fingers crossed here. Fingers crossed. There's one. Hit a little forward. So our range might have been a little much. Our first estimate of range might have been a little much. And then this guy hopefully doesn't have time to take too drastic of maneuvers here. Ideally you want him to hit almost simultaneous, but there's number 2. So our speed was a little fast. 7.8. We had 7.9 or so set in. I mean, geez, that's such hair splitting that that's almost doesn't even bear mention. But at any rate, we hit those both a little forward of center mass, which but I don't know, if it were me talking, I think that's probably good enough for government work. So anyway, I think that wraps this up. That covers the use of this file. That covers pretty much. I covered almost all the tools in here. I did not cover this. This is brand spanking new. I have not had a chance to play around with this yet in game. I could be all wet on these formulas. I made this, and then I looked at it again and hid under the table in the fetal position because it scared the hell out of me. But I got to make sure that that these are working how I think they are. But anyway, this is a work in progress. But anyway, these other tabs are entirely valid. I did not use this section, but we used pretty much everything else except this in here. So that is pretty much it. I guess I didn't do the bearing change either, but that's for another video. So anyway, that's a start. Happy hunting, and hope you enjoy.